so I'll apologize first and foremost in case this isn't working, but I'm currently at a party with 2 other people who are loud and rambunctiously playing Clash. So if the audio setup that I currently have set up is not muting them, I apologize in advance for it, but I'm just going to try and work my way through it because I have them muted. So, fair work. Senor Pablo. Pablo is the last of the supports unlocked from Mission 3, and like all supports, he has a couple of stats that are important to know first and foremost. He deals 20% less melee and range weapon damage by default, and he starts the match with a Shemps and an Amulet. Now, where Cheryl is the Cola Coaster, she's built around Shemps and Colas, Pablo is the Amulet Man. So it's important to understand before we start building him, he's actually going to be built differently. Your first ability is Gift from El Bruja Especial. Basically, you can craft an amulet every 2 minutes and drop it on the ground. Now, anybody can pick up this amulet. Your primary purpose as the Amulet King is, at the start of a match, you want to use this right away. Craft the amulet, drop it at the ground, you pick it up. You spawn with 1 amulet already by being a support, so this gives you a 2nd amulet. Now, your first passive that's unlocked, so your level 10 passive, gives you an extra amulet at the start. So you spawn with 2 amulets and you can craft 1 more. This gives you 3 amulets at the start of the game. This makes Pablo very good for comboing with either Henry or Army of Darkness Ashe at the start of the game. In fact, for a while there was a meta build floating around of Arthur, Army of Darkness Ashe, Henry, and Pablo as being the meta warrior lineup. While I disagree with that a little bit, Pablo does work better with the warriors than he does with the hunters, because of the fact that you're going to be using your shields more with Army of Darkness Ashe and with Henry. That being said, this passive's not very good. Just gives you an amulet at the start of the match that you wouldn't otherwise have. You'd have to find or level up. Your level 25 isn't great. It makes it so your shield bar gradually recovers over time until you have a full bar. Now, I want to mention that this ability kinda sucks, but we'll talk about why in a minute. The important reason before we start talking about builds is actually your starting passive. This is your default passive at the start of the game. Demons no longer see you in demon vision. This means you can drive a car, fire a gun, and let your fear get high in terrified territory without alerting the demon. The demon gets no notification about what you are doing at all unless they can physically see you. This is incredibly important as Pablo, because this gives you the ability to stealth, whereas other characters don't have this. Now, this is a double-edged sword. One might automatically assume that what you do is, at the start of a game, you can just hop into a car, bum rush to the first map piece, and just run around doing that. There are 2 problems. One, you are the only support on the team, which means your heals and amulets are not going to your teammates. You're not looting for amulets and colas. So as an early game Pablo, as a very early level Pablo, let's say until you get to level 10 or so, you do not get any value out of Infernal Camouflage other than just simply using your gun. Because the actual stealth portion of driving a car, letting your fear get high because you're off in the woods running off on your own, is not good. If the demon jumps you, you're dead. For one. And number 2, if your teammates get jumped while you're off doing that, either they're dead, or they're going to get weak enough to where when you come back to resurrect them, or revive them, or heal them, they're already going to be in a situation where there's not going to be much you're going to be able to do to get out of it. This is something that's happened to me before as Pablo. I run off to go get the last map piece, which is not far away from them. The 3 of them get jumped by a possessed basic unit. By the time I come back from the map piece, which it might be 50 yards away. It might be, 100 yards away. A relatively short distance like that, let's say 2 stamina bars worth, by the time I come back, one person's dead, one person's bleeding out, and one person's 1v1ing a demon. That's an unwinnable for most teams to come back from, especially right now with the basic unit possession build. So Pablo's a bit of a double-edged sword. Another issue that he has is he doesn't directly benefit healing. None of his passives are good around healing, because of the fact amulets are something that affect shields. If you don't increase your shield bars, if you don't increase shield carrying capacity as a teammate playing with Pablo, he's not going to get value out of his amulets. He can only carry a maximum of 6 amulets, 4 for a support, and then you can level up to carry 2 more amulets. That being said, he does not do well early game, because early game, what you want to do is find healing items. You want to find weapons. You want your teammates to find pink app so you can start leveling up. Now, warriors generally tend to load up on shields early on. Other classes don't. So because of that, if you're playing with other characters, you might not want to play Pablo. If you're playing with more leaders, if you're playing with more hunters. He's really good with Henry because you can pop at the start. Usually, for my pink F, I put an extra point into shield at the very beginning. And another issue that he suffers from at the beginning of the game is his shamanic protection, which is his level 25. This is really good in situations where you're getting bum rushed by the demon and you're constantly running out of amulets, because you are able to regenerate your own shield as you're going through. The downside is at the start of the match, let's say you haven't found any pink F, or let's say you're trying to solo an objective. You're not getting value out of your ability off of your primary ability or your second passive ability because you're not activating amulets. You're just going to let your shamanic protection go to work at the start of the game until you fill up a bar. So you have to find pink F and put it into your shield to get value out of it. So his shamanic protection is better for late game. Pablo in general is a better late game character. He's very good for solo queuing, but you still have to stay coordinated. So getting the basics that he's kind of a stealth lord that plays around amulets. He doesn't do a lot of direct healing. He has to play with his team more, even though he can solo. How do you build him? Now, he's going to have a different build than the other support characters is. So obviously your first point is into Shem's Plus. But whereas the other supports are going to build First Aid, into Shem's Cola, and Packing Pop, he needs to work on amulets early. So generally you're putting a point in a Long Life Battery, and then you're going to put a point into either First Aid or Shem's Plus. In my opinion, I'm going to work First Aid in. Now you have access to the 2 skills you need to level, which would be Deep Pocket Amulets, which you need to max, and Deep Pocket Shems, which then in turn leads to being able to max Packing Pop. Now the downside to this strategy is your first 9 points, most characters need 9 points in order to get 2 Packing Pop 2 anyways. But these 3 points on your other supports are going to be put elsewhere. These 3 points are usually in Shem's Plus. So you have no need to go into. So you're actually losing overall healing output as an early build Pablo. Now, for Pablo's minimum build, we're going to put the remaining points into Shem's Plus so we can buff our healing. And then we go down to Industrial Strength, and we buff Industrial Strength so that we're a bit tankier. You have 9 leftover points. So this is your basic Pablo build, which has a lot less points to work with than the other classes do. And because I want the dodge, you have the 1 point in Artful Dodger. This, in my opinion, is your minimum support build for Pablo. So this is, we'll call this build 2, because the first one is the amulet build at level 9, then you have this, which you finish off. So how do you build from here? Alright, so the first school of thought is the revive strategy, but the downside to that is most demon players like to camp bodies. So you don't necessarily need to build around revives. Alright, so the second build is around something like building around amulets. Alright, well here's the problem with that. So Reinforced Amulet is a good ability to run on him, because of the fact that you can pretty much always have an amulet active. This is good if you want to be a bit tankier. So if you're looking for a tankier build, I'm going to put the reinforced amulet in there. I'm going to put a point into Artful Dodger. Now you'd have to choose what you want to put your other points into. So you could put the 3 points into Improved Amulet, increase the length bar. You don't want to put that last point in there. This is a decent build for Pablo, make him a lot tankier. Your one remaining point, you can pretty much just yeet into something like Good Karma, Brave Survivor, or First Aid. Let's say you put it into Brave Survivor. This is a good tanky build for him. And what makes it better is that's a nice 10% damage reduction. Here's the problem. I don't like that damage reduction, because that 10% is not enough. So that's the main reason why I don't prefer that build. So, the next thing you could do is say that, well, because he's good at playing as objective, you could turn him into a pseudo-leader. 1 in Fear No Evil, put 3 points into Arcane Knowledge, 3 points into Fast Forward. This, in my opinion, is your best non-combat build on Pablo. The reason for that is because the Arcane Knowledge gives you a double the range at which you can see objective items, basically. Well, not double, but close enough. So you're going to go from 25 to 33. 32 or 33 meters. A little bit extra range, but it's not necessary to really get value out of that. If you want to, you can just take the 2 points out of that, put them somewhere else. Fast Forward is good, but the reason why it doesn't work on Pablo is because once you have the map pieces, you want to regroup with your team and play objective together. Unless you're playing on soloing an objective doesn't give you value, because the demon does get to see the progress bar on the screen of the objective. This might be good in a split capture scenario if both of the points are going off at the same time, but it lends itself to different strategies. So I'm not a fan of that build. The next build you could do would be to focus on trying to be more of a tanky warrior. This build is going to be based around trying to get your damage down off of Tougher Than Hell, and focusing on melee combat a bit more. So, you're going to max out Tougher Than Hell, and you're going to put your points into maxing out Seeing Stars here. That way there, you're able to be a bit more tankier in melee combat. The reason why I'm saying you want to go with this strategy is because you have to divert a lot of points away if you want Devastating Force for minimal gain. However, what I personally recommend is working on playing around hollow points, because you can play around guns more. Now, I want hollow points at tier 3. So you have to make a decision if you're going to take the point out of Artful Dodger, or you're going to take the point out of Seeing Stars. In my opinion, I'm taking the point out of Artful Dodger. Now, it might seem weird, but it's a 5% stamina cost reduction. It's not going to give me an extra dodge. It's just going to give me a little bit more stamina when I'm done dodging, which is critical, but less so than 10% balance bar. 10% is a big number. That's a big jump there. So this is my personal build. Now, Devastating Force, because I can abuse my guns a bit more, what this is going to do is it's going to make it so that you have a -5 to range weapons, as opposed to a -20. Now, your melee is still going to be shit, but that's the other reason why I'm keeping Balance Bar in there with Seeing Stars at 3, because I'm primarily going to be using my melee weapons for finishers, allowing me to chain a bit more. It also is going to mean I don't have to tank as much with things like Tougher Than Hell. Now, one idea why you might be wondering why I'm building this tree at all, the Seeing Stars and the Wig Splitter, there's no point to going Stopping Power and Last Word. This is something I have talked about more. On a combat-heavy tree, you're better off, for melee, you're better off going Stopping Power, building the Last Word 3, as opposed to Seeing Stars. No. The finisher power is much more important, because you're not always going to be using the Last Word, and you're not dealing as much damage. Now, in my opinion, Pablo is one of the few characters that can get away with this because you have exactly enough points to work with for the hollow points build. If you were to do the melee build, you would then have to take a point away from seeing stars to max out melee. That's one of the main reasons why I don't like running the melee on him. Because while that is effective, I shouldn't have to. Now, support Ash can get away with that because remember, he doesn't have these 3 points monopolized. Yes, I said monopolized, deal with it. He can take those 3 points that he's missing there, put into Seeing Star, put it into Artful Dodger, and still have a point left over. Pablo does not have that luxury. So, this is my personal build on him. I have heard the argument that, well, he should have a max deep pockets where instead of even building this tree entirely, you could put a point into Courage and Numbers, and then 2 points into Matchsticks, and then maybe Speed of Light, and you'd still have a point left over that you could put back into Artful Dodger. Not a fan of it. But from the looks of it so far, the next character that we're going to be having a video on is probably going to be Henry, so just stay tuned for that.